Yeah, just to start out, like, thanks again for coming on the podcast. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Anthony Ganjou. I'm the co-founder of Move.ai. We're building the industry's leading markerless and AI motion capture software.
I love it. And I was curious, just to start out, could you describe what Move.ai is?
Yeah, fundamentally, we're a software company. You know, the company started just under 4 years ago. I'd sold my last business and was running innovation and technology for quite a large sports and entertainment agency. And I was doing a talk at Imperial College London, which is known in the UK as being one of the hotbeds for producing incredible AI talent and engineering talent. And I was talking about the future of sports and entertainment. And having finished my talk, my co-founder, who was doing his PhD in computer vision and kinematics at the time, bounded over to me and showed me some of the stuff he was working on with his thesis. And this was kind of late 2018. And what he was sharing with me that he could accomplish with computer vision at that time just blew me away. I mean, it was the first time that I've really seen an AI technology that had the potential to revolutionize any number of industries. And so about a week later, we kind of met back up and said, why don't we actually try and create a company that's rapidly commercializing some of the work that you've done in your thesis and harnessing it and tailoring it towards entertainment, gaming, and sport. Co-founded Move.ai in April of 2019. And really over the past 3.5 years, we've built a team of about 35 strong now, largely incredible engineers, deep learning, machine learning, computer vision experts, really with the mantra of creating a software that could truly and perfectly extract human motion from any video. And that kind of really is the ambition, is getting AI to a level where it can properly and truly understand to an incredibly high degree of accuracy how people are moving within any video we feed through it. Particularly in the past 12 months with everything that's exploded with Meta and Metaverse and VR and AR and XR and game engine technology, it's been incredible really for us because, we're kind of in one of those moments in time where clearly AI and generative AI is revolutionizing everything, but particularly within the creative industries, it's enabling and empowering opportunities at scale that have just never been deemed possible before. And so for us to kind of be a part of that in regards to where we sit, which is, fundamentally mocap and animation, it's a really exciting time. And we're genuinely at a threshold where whilst the technology itself is, at a comparable level to other mocap solutions, we're kind of still fundamentally at ground zero. So, the tech with where we are right now has exponential room for improvement. It really is kind of a baby technology. And that's the amazing thing about AI. So yeah, it's exciting times for us.
I'm curious, in terms of features, like what are the key features? Like you mentioned before, potentially having multiple people in camera, like what are the typical areas that you lean into for the product at the moment?
When it comes down to kind of things beyond cost, and just to cover off costs. So the cost of the app when we go live on March 1st is going to be $365. And, that allows anyone to kind of come on and start to use the system and start processing and shooting animation data. Obviously, the hardware is something that you need to acquire yourself, whether you've got an iPhone, whether you've got some in your drawers. It's quite unique because the software can run on iPhones down to the Model 8. So even 10 years old iPhones, it will work on perfectly. So most people that are engaging with the beta have kind of either sourced their own iPhones or buy refurbished ones. So you can get an iPhone 11 now for a couple of $100 refurbished, and there's loads of great refurbished sites. So you're acquiring the hardware. So you're kind of all in for a hardware plus software cost of, $700-800. So the cost is, as I say, magnitudes cheaper than other solutions. And then in terms of uniqueness, I think the key fundamental things that we're offering to pretty much every stakeholder that's engaging with Move is scalability. So if you've got loads of people that you want to start doing animation and motion capture in the cheapest, most efficient, most high quality way, here's a great solution to you. So I think the scalability is quite key, particularly to the larger clients and the mid-sized clients that we're working with. The second thing is the ability to shoot multiple people. So obviously if you're outside of an optical studio, you've got to have multiple suits, which then starts to get very expensive. So with the iPhone system, you can shoot up to 3 people in a volume of up to 12 by 12. And lastly is the flexibility. So, the fact that you can be set up ready to shoot within 6 or 7 minutes with calibration anywhere, literally. That could be a park, it could be an aquarium, it could be your bedroom, your living room, your office, anywhere. So it's the ease of being able to shoot in any environment, in any location, having that flexibility without spending time taking suits or bringing suits or sending suits or putting suits on, or having that flexibility, I think, is quite key. And it's probably worthwhile, again, just underlining that the fundamental kind of way in which the technology works at the moment is quality is determined by number of devices. So, at a kind of an entry level, you're shooting with 2 iPhones, right? And that's giving you kind of lower level inertial data. And the more iPhone devices that you add, the higher the quality data that you derive, the larger volume that you can shoot, and the greater number of people that you can shoot as well. So you could start with 2 and you can go up to 6 iPhone devices. And so you're talking 3 to 4 devices giving you, super high quality inertial data, and 5 to 6 devices giving you near optical level data. And all the while, the devices that you get, they can be any model of iPhones. So it doesn't need to be 3 8s or 3 11s. You could have an 8, an 11, a 12, a 14. I mean, that's the other thing that really excites us about this as well is, the ability to enable kind of legacy technology, which will probably be collecting dust in your drawer, but be miles cheaper than most kind of other standardized hardware is really exciting, particularly now that the whole idea of refurbished electronics is starting to come into the consumer mainstream as well.
That alone is something that's, great for the environment. It's great in terms of practicality. You're not needing to buy the latest and greatest hardware for everything. You can actually go out and buy the things that people have discarded and be able to leverage it for a whole different thing. You mentioned before, it's an exciting time. And, I think that for me, I've kind of selfishly felt like, I did kind of grow up in the perfect time for contrast between pre-internet and mobile phones and, everything else. And then also 2011 neural networks kicking in and AI becoming a very revolutionary thing, especially in the last 3 years. For you, how do you feel about that? Just because, again, I think it is such an exciting time, and I think that most people aren't fanatics about it. They're not really keeping their finger on the pulse, but they're all very intrigued. And the fact that it is kind of capturing mainstream people and their attention is one thing, but in general, just being able to kind of keep their finger on the pulse in terms of what's coming down the pipe. There's so many innovations every single day. So, I mean, for you, what's that been like to observe, looking at all the tech that's innovating every day and the tech that you guys are developing as well?
There's been a kind of a rapid evolution, I'd say, in the past 12 months or so, from AI being something which is, in the mainstream consumer and to a certain degree professional consciousness as being something which is industrial, enterprise, complex, the remit of incredibly smart people, and confusion as to what it is and what it does and why it's relevant and why it matters to me. And I think it's remarkable in the past 12 months, actually, how, so many incredible tools have come out that harness the power of AI that really are familiar and understandable and enabling. And it's kind of almost just demystifying what AI is and what it can do. And so I think that kind of emergence into the mainstream consumer consciousness of AI being something that, is kind of this creative enablement tool and something that can be translated into something that really makes sense to me as an individual, whether I'm a consumer or a professional. I think that's been a marked shift. We ultimately are in a place whereby I guess what we're trying to do is benefiting from the way in which the trends are moving towards automation, democratization, cost efficiency, scale, enabling creativity at a much faster pace and speed. The mindsets that are starting to develop within people that are actually creating incredible content, whether that's movies, VFX, shorts, games, doesn't need to be that expensive. It doesn't need to require loads of people. It doesn't need to require massive amounts of expertise or historic background. And it can be, created and generated using the right types of AI tools. And, as I say, for us, we're wholly embracive of kind of everything that's happening in relation to, generative AI and particularly with the creative opportunity that it's opening up, because, we're kind of very lasered in when it comes to AI, focusing on movement and motion data. And so, we're still in a point right now where people engaging with Move have got to have a level of technical capability, whether that comes to Omniverse or Unreal or Unity or some kind of VFX understanding. But what's rapidly starting to transpire now is that with the types of tools that are emerging, you won't necessarily have to have that expertise in game engine technology to use the motion in a way that you can create something. So, particularly in the last, for us, 12 months, I'd say, ever since Meta became Meta and, the metaverse became something. So you kind of got the generative AI piece, and you kind of got the metaverse piece, and you've also got the continuing emergence of game engines and VR and AR and XR. All these things kind of have come together to really help us accelerate what we're doing and illustrate really contextually valuable ways of how people can use our system across all those different environments.
Just to touch on that, do you guys have a specific target market? Because again, video games and film are one thing that typically most people would associate motion capture. I'm just going to dumb it down to motion capture for a second, but obviously there's so many surrounding industries, especially when you talk about AI and computer vision. Suddenly it is being able to walk into, I'm thinking of Nordstrom's, like a typical clothing store or something, about to observe people's behavior and actually, be able to translate that into something. But of course, then there's also the metaverse, which is obviously the big buzzword, but it is where we're all going. And I think one of the big disconnects right now is things like having a floating torso at a business desk versus actually having your actual body language. For you, like, is that a specific target market that you're really excited about? Is metaverse as well as Second Life type of human interaction, things like that, or which markets are you going for?
It's a really good question. Ultimately, I think that the kind of core markets are, as you say, gaming, cinematic filmmaking, VFX. The metaverse factor is, I would say it's conjoined and combined with game engine technology starting to be utilized in the way every business is promoting themselves, whether that's online, on mobile, in VR, AR, XR. It's becoming a function as to how you experience business, brands, life, and how you consume things. So for us, there's been a really interesting kind of evolution in clients that aren't your typical just gaming studios, and we work with some of the biggest ones in the industry in any case, or aren't your typical kind of consumers of motion capture like film and cinematic studios or VFX production houses, but are businesses that have never really seen a requirement for animation or motion capture before. But now kind of game engine technology is enabling kind of ways in which they can showcase what they do or how they want to convey their product or service online. That requirement is starting to be there. And a great example is a client that we've got who's been a client now for about 8 months, which is one of the world's leading architectural firms. And one of the key things they rely on to effectively build incredible buildings is the visualization of the buildings as part and parcel of planning and conceptualization. And so what they need to bring those to life, which they do in game engines like UE5, is design the entire thing from every aspect you can imagine, and you can walk around it, fly through it. But they also have a requirement for actually visualizing how people would move around the space. And so there's an example of kind of where game engine technology is evolving how a business is thinking about its content strategy and its consumer engagement strategy. And we're kind of able to plug into that with a solution which kind of makes that experience better. We don't necessarily see the technology as being something which is specifically rooted in video game production or specifically rooted in cinematic production. Clearly, those are the traditional major markets for motion capture. But I think for what really excites us is the way in which people that are at scale now able to create short films or movies or games, and how these kind of game engine platforms are enabling that. That's also really interesting for us too. And we're in quite a weird paradox. And I think it's largely of our own making, because we set out with this ambition to create an algorithm that could truly understand accurate motion. And I'm fully conscious and aware that almost every person listening to this would have had an experience with AI or markerless motion capture before and probably found it to be quite poor or just not at the level where it's usable. Over the past kind of 2 years, we've been very aware of that and very aware of the limitations from all the other kind of markerless companies out there in regards to just a threshold level that they've never been able to get past to actually be able to say this is becoming comparable to both inertial and optical systems. And I guess there was a defining moment for us which came kind of around early 2021, where we first connected with EA, and the EA team reached out to us and said, look, we know that markerless is the future, and we know that AI is evolving in a way that there is a moment in time where it's going to become as good as other solutions that are out there, but we've never managed to find anything that was good enough or remotely good enough. But from what we've seen, from what you guys are doing, we think this has potential. And so, we spent about 8 months working with them, on an informal basis to finesse and evolve and improve and optimize every part of the algorithm. And from a fundamentals point of view, what is our kind of secret sauce and what we've patented is what we call our kinematics engine. So that's the understanding of physics, biomechanics, joint movement, body layout, kind of everything you can imagine that comes to how we move. And ultimately, we got to a stage after those 6 months, being very fortunate to work with some of the best guys in the industry that could help us really even laser into things like foot contact and joint rotation and limb positioning and all the above. They basically sent us a video, which we were very fortunate to present at SIGGRAPH, which you can see either on our website or on some of our socials, which is a test that they've done with 8 GoPro cameras, filming a single individual in an optical motion capture studio, and basically taking the data from the optical technology, the data from our software and the GoPros, and putting them side by side on an avatar and showing the direct comparison of the same movement produced by the two systems. And it was very similar. And I think we kind of felt like at that point that actually we kind of are now at this threshold of being able to have belief in the technology being at a similar level of quality as inertial and optical systems. And how do we then scale it? And that kind of set us on the journey towards actually, focusing on enabling the technology on mobile devices and ubiquitous hardware, which is kind of where we are now.
There's so much innovation going on at the moment. Like I'm really personally excited about this a lot. I was curious for you, is there a specific level that you're aiming to compare to? Like obviously the whole grail is to compete 100% one-to-one with both optical and inertia, but right now, is there like a set kind of market area that you're trying to participate at in that whole market?
Yes. And, I would say that the kind of the lower level inertial suits and the other kind of markerless motion capture providers are the most near-term kind of directly competitive solutions to us at the moment. Ultimately, we aren't in a position yet where we are real time. We are actually launching a real-time system in kind of April or May, but that's not going to be enabled yet for iPhones and kind of individual small creators. I think if we were in a position where we could run real-time, which is only a matter of time, then we'd be definitely looking to compete against the likes of the optical players. But clearly, not being able to run in real time is a major challenge for using a technology that you're using in production. And we kind of understand that. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't a huge number of use cases whereby people that have either bought inertial systems or have bought optical systems can use our technology to do stuff that they just can't. And whether that's capturing movement that does the way you can't wear a suit, or even kind of multiple people in multiple different environments that don't require an expensive studio, or where you don't have to worry about all the interference or the magnetism or whatever. Move presents a really interesting modular solution for people that have those tools in any case to shoot animation and motion in scenarios where they can't. We're also starting to see some of the biggest companies in the world who have got investments in optical studios and some who have investments in inertial studios, but there's a limitation to how those can scale. And so, for example, if you're a big company doing a significant amount of animation and you want to do a huge amount of previs at scale, the ability to kind of have a software that works on iPhones that allows any of your animators to shoot motion capture and previs wherever they are, anywhere in the world, presents something that is just impossible to compete with unless you've got a massive budget to spend on multiple different studios. Certainly from a consumer point of view and people that are using us, I think they would directly compare, a $400 software license, which is kind of around what we're launching the app for, to a $4,000 suit. Is kind of that band. But what's been really exciting for us since we launched our iPhone beta in October has been the scale of different companies that we've had on there. And we're talking about, pretty much the who's who of animation that's on the beta, as well as thousands of kind of small, medium-sized studios and individual creators as well. And they've all kind of got a different use case for what they want to use it for, whether it's previs or shooting sports stuff or creating a VFX short or reducing cost to produce a new game or creating incredible animations for Roblox. It's so vast, the use case for the different customer coming into the platform, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think that is really something that, we're talking briefly about this before we started. There's a huge barrier of entry typically to, I'm going to do air quotes here, but AAA games or Hollywood film, where especially you go back 20 something years, you'd be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get off the ground with an SGI, with Maya or Softimage and all these other tools. Same thing with motion capture, you'd be looking at $100,000. And the fact that there is accessibility now to so much technology that anyone can pick up, a PC or a phone and start being creative, I think is amazing. Do you find there's a huge diversity there between, as you've mentioned, like the EAs and companies like that versus, let's say, the student, or even like, I'm a big fan of the fact that Nigeria has such a huge filming community over there, like Nollywood, whereas like typically a lot of people would be blocked out of that purely because of the price threshold. So have you found that just to be a really rewarding thing, to have that diversity of everyone being able to pick up and use your product to create their ideas and animations?
I mean, I think it's a privilege. I think it's a highly unusual situation to be in a place where you're kind of putting a tech out to market and it's being used by a range of individuals, from students just coming into animation to world-class kind of AAA and cinematic VFX studios. The thing that is, again, that's super interesting and really exciting for us is the international opportunity. I mean, you mentioned Nigeria, there's India, there's a number of different kind of international regions that, again, we started to see pick up on the beta, where we're enabling a tool set that people just can't access any other way. And so to your point about kind of the competition, that ability to allow someone who wants to create motion capture, to create animation, to be creative with whatever they want to produce, wherever they are in the world, is something it's a hugely exciting kind of thing for us. And as we kind of move towards launching, I always say this to people. Obviously, we think there's a massive opportunity for what we can do in Europe and a massive opportunity for what we can do in North America, but there are also endless opportunities for us in kind of regions around the world, including Nigeria, and we've got some incredible creators from Nigeria sign up on the beta, where suits and studios just aren't accessible, don't exist, or are just totally unaffordable. That's really exciting, kind of bringing those tool sets to those countries and regions and that creative talent that wouldn't have had it accessible before.
That's really cool. I was curious, like, how long did it take you guys to find product fit with what you're developing? Because again, like you mentioned, you're a business partner studying computer vision and human kinematics. I kind of feel like it already narrows down like what you guys are going to be aiming for. So I mean, yeah, in terms of product fit for your company and for the product you're creating, like how long did it take to kind of really hone in on what you guys wanted to do?
It was around 9 months until we kind of made the conscious decision as a business to focus on what we called at the time volumetric animation, which is effectively using computer vision for 3D motion extraction or 4D motion extraction. It then took, I'd say, after those first 9 months, another 9 months for us to get to the point whereby we are paying clients and we were working towards an ambition of not just standardized motion extraction. And there are so many companies, household name ones and new ones, that have got, relatively standardized and simple kind of video upload tools and single video motion extraction tools, which can give you motion, but the motion is, not great. It's not really usable. There isn't anything other than kind of, social media usage or basic animation stuff that you can do with it. And so for us, the second kind of 9 month period was getting to the point where we were genuinely at a place where we felt that the data we could generate from the software was at a high quality level. And, it's always hard to kind of building a technology to kind of be objective about that when you're the one building the technology as to how high quality is it. It was kind of, I guess, again, when we got to the point where there were AAA studios and people that were using the technology and saying, yeah, this is really kind of getting to a level where it's super good, that we kind of then made the call as to, right, well, we've kind of got two routes here. We either purely focus on AAA, massive studios and people with massive budgets, because it's important to know that the core software itself has been designed to run on pretty much any camera you can imagine. Whether that's cinematic grade cameras, Blackmagic cameras, GoPros, iPhones, it isn't just optimized for a single set of hardware, it's completely malleable. And that's how we can start to do massive volumes of multiple people, because we're just using high grade cameras and higher quality fidelity video. The clients that we had and the conversations that we were having with the cinematic grade and the AAAs and the massive studios, you've got an issue there, which ultimately is they've got a solution that works. And in most instances, they've already committed to a huge amount of money to put that solution in. So there's value in having an ancillary solution that does things that can't, but it's not going to change the game at the moment, particularly when it's not real time, and particularly where they've invested the capital in kind of creating that infrastructure. And so, whilst we were kind of cherry picking some great clients who we were working with, we felt like there was a much bigger opportunity to kind of laser into, particularly when we got the tech working on mobile devices, which happened probably about month 20, that we felt, well, actually now you don't need to necessarily go and buy a specific piece of hardware, because a lot of people would have this hardware already in their pockets. But we can run this on hardware that we know is incredibly robust, incredibly reliable, is accessible to anyone and everyone around the world, and has the functionality that we need to kind of sync a rig, to network a rig with multiple devices, and then immediately kind of send the videos to the cloud. And so kind of cracking mobile was a big thing for us about 9 months ago, because it allowed us to really focus on actually creating a solution that could scale for a mass market of creators and consumers.
You mentioned before about like entry-level specs. I was curious, like, let's say that's a way that someone kind of gets to test the waters and say, okay, I'm sold, like, let's go all in. I got carte blanche. My grandma gave me $1 million. Let's go. What would be the ideal setup? Would it be, using 16 8K cameras, wide lens versus more of a narrow lens matter, high frame rate? I'm just kind of curious, like, for you, what are the ideal specs if you had unlimited funds and were going to go all in?
That's a really good question.
And I might be selfishly asking this question for myself. So,
I think it would depend on what you wanted to shoot. So, for example, if you want to shoot a lot of sports content in a large volume area, like a football stadium, as an example, you pick a certain type of camera to do that. I think if you're kind of focusing on replicating a traditional motion capture studio, the Blackmagic cameras work brilliantly, the OptiTrack Primes work amazingly well, the Lumias work great. If you want something smaller, the Sony RX02s work brilliantly. But I mean, ultimately the iPhones, where you're talking about shooting a volume of less than 7x7, they work as nearly as well. You will get slightly significant increases in quality, and you definitely will be able to shoot more people in those spaces. And I guess that's kind of partly the beauty of what we're trying to do. And one of the ways in which we are starting to work with larger clients is just that modularity. So you're kind of buying a license to the software, and then we can recommend hardware based on specific use cases. So maybe you buy a license to the software, and you might want 100 users using iPhones all over the world to do previs. But you also might want to have, a set studio that might be 5x5 with Sony RX02s. It may be that you want a larger volume that you can either transport or have sited in a larger studio volume, whether it's a virtual production studio or whatever, that's using kind of Blackmagics. There isn't one answer to the question. And the reason being is, we want to try and get to a place whereby you don't have to think about animation and motion capture in a specific environment. We want to give creators the flexibility to go and capture animation wherever they want, whenever they want. Even if that is going and shooting something like, dancing on the beach, or wherever. I'm sorry to give you that answer. I'd love to tell you that for $1 million,
Here's a shopping list.
Sign a check, here you go. But you know, we operate slightly more broadly than that.
And obviously, you're really leaning into mobile solutions right now. For offline, are you guys GPU based? Like, is it ideal to have a super fast computer, or regular hardware is typically acceptable?
At the moment, with the iPhone solution, everything is processed in the cloud on AWS.
Okay.
So you're basically shooting on the devices. The files that you're shooting are all synced via the devices. So, I mean, look, from a fundamentals point of view, you set up the devices, control the devices with an app. Basically, you're tapping the app, which then effectively activates all the phones as shooting rigs. So it's creating one interconnected motion capture rig. You're then hitting shoot to calibrate. You're walking in, you're holding your arms up, you're moving forwards to each camera to mark out the volume of calibration. That takes about 60 seconds. You're hitting send on the app to send that to the cloud, and then you're away to shoot, right? You can shoot whatever you like. And the moment you finish shooting, you hit send and it sends all the files to the cloud. And within the cloud, they're processed, and a minute takes about 5-6 minutes of processing. And then you immediately get your data back. So, at the moment, the infrastructure behind the mobile side is built purely on cloud. And the reason why we build it purely on cloud is it can scale. It's cost efficient and it's super fast, or it's as fast as it can be at the moment whilst providing scale. Now, we are looking at kind of things like on-device processing to make it faster and kind of bring it more towards real time. We do have a real-time system that's launching in April, which is going to be at a higher grade level of cost than an iPhone system. And yes, that will require more of a significant piece of on-site hardware, like a server, so like an NVIDIA A6000 or specs to that effect. You'll then be processing everything actually on the server in venue.
Cool. That's great. That's really good to know as well. And I guess, like, has there been any ideal case studies? You mentioned EA being one that you worked very closely with. Are there other projects or ones that kind of highlight your technology being used in their product, their game, their film that you can talk about?
There's hundreds of them. The challenge is actually being able to talk about the brands themselves that are using it. A lot of these clients have got existing relationships with other providers of kind of animation tools whose knows they don't want to put out joint. So it's about the ability to kind of really being able to socialize it. I mean, we were eternally grateful for EA to kind of finally allow us to be able to talk about the work we're doing with them. But if you stay tuned on our socials, we're going to be posting a number of different really exciting projects we're working on at the moment with some really kind of well-respected studios and brands.
Yeah, I'm friends with the guys Action VFX. They sell stock footage for video games and film, and that's something where it's like they've got so many amazing clients who are like, we love your product, and as soon as they say, cool, can you talk about it? It's like, no, because we don't want people to know it. We just use your product instead of actually creating this stuff from scratch. It's the same thing with some tech companies I know who are working with Marvel. Every single big movie you can think of, their product's being used, but then when it comes to PR, it's just everyone's so tight-lipped that unfortunately they don't get any press, which I feel is really critical, especially when you're getting off the ground.
Yeah, it is. I mean, honestly, Allan, though, I guess one of the things that we're fortunate in is the output of our technology is visually enchanting, right, and really super engaging. So being able to kind of go and shoot someone that is playing basketball in reality and visualize that in Unreal or in whatever kind of scene, is quite visually impactful. And so we've been really fortunate, and we're able to kind of really contextually illustrate the power of the technology through social media and platforms like LinkedIn. And that's been amazing for us, not just to kind of build a community of people that are starting to, believe that it is the quality that people are saying it is, and it's not all smoke and mirrors, and we're not manually, tightening up the animation and so on and so on. But two, kind of starting to actually drip feed the thought process as to, okay, so what if I didn't think about motion capture and animation purely in a studio or in a suit? What if I had endless flexibility of what I could do with a really cost-efficient tool? What would that empower me or allow me to create? And so I guess the fact that we can put these really wonderful videos that we're creating, as well as some of our users are creating online, it makes it a relatively easy thing to showcase and sell, rather than selling accountancy software or something like that might be really challenging.
Amen. Curious if you could walk me through a bit of the process, let's say from initial setup, also post-process as well. So once you finished recording, getting into a DCC package, clean up, things like that. So I was just kind of curious for the whole 360, what's the process typically look like?
From a moment one point of view, if you're engaging with Move, you're either going to download the app from the App Store, or you are signing up for a user profile on our website. Either way, if you sign up for a profile or you're downloading the app, you download the app, you get the phones that you want to shoot, and you decide where you want to shoot and how many people you want to shoot. So in that location, which can be, as I say, literally anywhere, we're not affected by environmental conditions or anything else like that. You set up the phones, and we've got various different kind of diagrams and documentation that show the best optimization of how you set up the phones, depending on the volume that you want to shoot. And the system can be made malleable. So if you want to shoot in a triangle or a circle or a rectangle, you can set up the phones in that orientation and respect. Once the phones are set up, which is literally just switching them on and putting them on tripods, or even clamping them to walls, they can sit on tables as long as they don't move once they're in situ. You're then opening up the app. The app is automatically syncing all the devices, so you're kind of creating a master control that syncs every single phone in the rig. You're then running a calibration, which is effectively hitting record. You move into the middle of your volume, you hold up your arms just like that, and you are moving towards each camera where your body stays in shot, and you are calibrating the volume. So you only need to do that once. So the setup, the calibration, you're hitting a button to send the calibration to your cloud platform, which again you can access on your mobile or from a laptop. That whole process of setup and calibration takes anywhere from, if you know what you're doing, 4 minutes to 12 minutes. It can be incredibly quick. And the calibration step is really fast. We're using the human body as the calibration tool ultimately. So once you've done that, you're kind of ready to shoot, and then you can start shooting really anything you want. It's a case of someone stepping in to the volume, doing a T-pose, you hitting record, and then shooting whatever motion you want. You hit stop record, and that might be once or 100 times that you want to call motion within that rig. You're hitting send to the cloud, and directly from your mobile, you're sending files direct to your account in the cloud and on your web app, and hitting process. And that process is around 5 minutes for every 1 minute of footage that you're shooting. It will take 5 minutes to process at the moment. So then at that point, you're getting a pre-visualization video and an FBX animation. And we've got a variety of rigs that you can effectively retarget to, automatically retarget to, or you can upload your own rig. And in regards to kind of cleanup, I think most people are really surprised by how little cleanup is required. Clearly, depending on the scale of motion and the type of motion and the setup we have, there can be cleanup. We kind of like to think that there's a huge amount less cleanup than other solutions that are in the same kind of level of cost. But what we're finding is that a lot of people are taking the output animation data that we're generating and bringing into their preferred platform for cleanup or 3D rendering software, where they then kind of take it into wherever they want, whether that's a game or a game engine or wherever.
Does a high frame rate on a camera help improve accuracy by obviously having more frames to reference?
Yes, it does, although not significantly. The individual customer would need to make the decision as to whether they wanted to invest in high-grade hardware based on a incremental improvement, not an exponential improvement, over and above kind of super cheap hardware. It also depends on the volume that you're shooting. So, if you're shooting a 20 by 20, obviously having much higher grade, high resolution cameras is going to give you much better data than if you're shooting 6 by 6. So there are variables that kind of define whether it does, but certainly if you're shooting larger areas with a lot more people, then yes, it will. But for the vast majority of cases where you're looking for really decent quality animation, having a 10 by 10 space or a 7 by 7 space with a few iPhones will give you really decent quality data that you'll be able to use with minimal cleanup.
And in terms of cameras, when you're placing your cameras, obviously you want to have 360 coverage, but at the same time, does varying the heights, so some that are low, some that are high, things like that matter at all?
Not at all. So as long as each individual phone can see the body top to toe, so the orientation of the phone is positioned in a way where the video that you're filming is capturing the full person, then it doesn't really matter whether the cameras are at the same or a near height. And yeah, we've done tests where cameras, in fact, I could show you. So you can probably see in our office, we've got clamps where we're positioning them up on the top and on tripods. And, the system is incredibly malleable. So, if you've got effectively a space that you're working to, which might have a windowsill on one side, a table on the other side, and kind of using two tripods, you could do that. So there isn't really any inhibiting factor to the height orientation. It's really robust and flexible in that way.
And in terms of lighting, I'm sure obviously it's optical in that sense that you need to be able to see what you're capturing, but would low light opposed to very bright, vibrant light environments be ideal? Like, let's say low light with very vibrant, bright clothing, things like that, so that way you can distinguish between the talent and the background?
It's preferable, but it's not binary, i.e., if the lighting conditions aren't amazing, as long as you can clearly see the body in the video, it's like, the way a human eye would look at it, then you should get really good quality data. I mean, a lot of people ask us about the clothing and should I be buying,
Lots of spandex,
vanilla ice puff pants, pink puff pants, and like crazy clothing. Does that improve it? So long as you've got a contrast between yourself and what's around you, i.e., what's behind you and what's on the floor, then you don't need to have very bright, leery, or kind of specific pattern colored clothes. No, you don't. Although I have to be honest, when people ask us that and they send us some outrageously over the top, garish t-shirts, and will they make a difference? We are tempted to say sometimes, give it a go and see how you get on.
That could be your whole angle to stand out is getting MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice to.
Yeah.
I find it kind of intriguing because obviously as cameras improve and as well as processing power improves, I can imagine that eventually hands and face could become a thing, but obviously baby steps. But where do you see all this tech going in terms of your product and where you ideally want to take it that you can publicly talk about?
So you are getting finger tracking out of the box right now. It's not at a super high degree of fidelity, but it's good quality. So we do have finger tracking kind of out of the box on the iPhone solution. We kind of have made a decision not to really get too much into facial animation, largely because there are a number of really brilliant solutions that are eminently affordable already out there. And obviously with tools like audio to face with the likes of video and stuff like that, audio to facial animation generation, it's something that I think is not worthwhile for us to offer as part of the package that we're saying to a company, particularly where a lot of people are using heads-up displays when they're within a Move rig. So there's no issue with that if you want to combine facial animation from a third-party software with our body animation. I think ultimately where we want to get to is we want to be in a position where we've got optical grade fidelity running with as few cameras as possible in real time. And I think that's the ambition. And I think that is not as far away as a lot of people would think it is. I can't see a situation where you're ever going to be able to get optical grade fidelity, certainly in the next 5 years, from a single camera, unless the LiDAR and the depth mapping improves exponentially, which it might. We've done a lot of work on single camera and we've got a single camera solution, but the quality is just not going to be as good in the short term as a multicam solution. But I think that really is it. It's kind of being able to have optical level quality in real time on a relatively cheap mobile device. And I think for us, that's not that far away. I mean, and we've kind of got an ambition to try and be in that place by year's end. And I think at that point where it's real time and it's super high quality and the cost is dramatically lower and the output and setup is dramatically easier and more flexible, that's where you're going to start to see people really making the shift towards embracing AI over and above kind of legacy solutions. But, between that point and now, I think for us, it's important to say that we don't really kind of go out there with a mantra in the market is to say, use them or us. I mean, there's a lot of things that those technologies can do that we can't. And there's also a lot of stuff that we can do that they can't. So it's kind of a tool set that we're providing as part and parcel of, animation suite of tools for motion capture that any individual creator or any business can use. So they can kind of shoot wherever, whatever, and kind of any number of people that they want in a way that kind of delivers on whatever creative idea that they have.
You'd always have them, your mantra be, yeah, you can use them, but you'll then use us.
There's no doubt that AI is kind of, transforming, coming back to what we were talking about right at the outset, it's transforming everything. I can foresee a time within a decade where, optical systems and to a certain degree inertial systems are going to be rendered redundant by AI. And that is largely because, whether it's us the ones that are delivering upon that or not, the growth and improvements of the AI itself and kind of AI just period generically across everything from Mid-Journey to ChatGPT, the improvements have exponential potential. So, with where we are right now with the kind of core technology, that it is still kind of ground zero. It's like stage one. So, we've got magnitudes of improvement in speed, in accuracy, in capability that we can achieve over the next 10 years. So, who knows what will transpire, but ultimately, I think you'll start to see a huge amount more businesses and creators embracing, AI tools for motion capture and animation over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, for sure.
Is there any specific technology that you're excited about and keeping your eye on that's either available now or coming down the pipe?
One of the things that is really exciting us at the moment, and we're seeing a lot of clients actually using it, is there's a company called Avatar, and they have designed a system that is quite similar to actually the recent NBA video that you might have seen. But it all runs off an iPhone and allows you within 30 seconds to generate a super high fidelity avatar, literally just from scanning half of your body. And that's exciting. The ability for you to generate avatars of yourself or from anyone at massive scale, and then personalize them using things like tools like Mid-Journey. So you're creating a base avatar, and then you're able to kind of describe exactly what it to wear, what the hair looks like, what jewelry they're wearing. That character generation is really interesting for us because, ultimately one of the things that is, I guess, a slight inhibitor at the moment for people that don't really understand game engine technology at kind of with a material level experience is how do you craft and create a really incredible avatar that you're utilizing in any environment. So I'd probably keep an eye on them.
I'll keep an eye out for it for sure. Hey, this has been really great to sit down and chat with you, and I really appreciate your time. March 1st, you guys are doing product launch then?
March 1st on the App Store, yeah. And for anyone listening, if you want to have a play, happy to send a team to shoot for you. You can download the app. There's some 3 minutes you can play with. I would like to think that a lot of people listening to this will probably thinking really skeptically about, this, I just don't believe this is good enough. But I mean, the discovery part of people actually shooting with our system and then realizing the quality of the output is exhilarating, and it's kind of one of those things that should experience, because ultimately I think that the ease of use and accessibility is something that's going to change the industry.
Yeah, I'll definitely be checking it out, so I'm sure I'll be able to sing your praises very soon myself. So again, this has been really great to chat, so thank you so much.
That's a pleasure, Allan. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.